I don't know about for you guys, but for me, this Q4 this year is not the same as it's been in the past. Mainly, the main reason for that is because of things I'm doing. I'm switching around and reshaping how I'm doing my whole reselling business. I'm changing the way I source, list, price, and so many other things I've been talking about in my past few videos. But to add to that, all of these platforms are also making slight changes to how they do things as well. And that's going to be the topic of this month's reseller income report that I want to touch on towards the end of the video. Specifically, I want to chime in on Poshmark's new algorithm and how they've switched up how search works now. For now, as always, let's get into some of the best and the worst sales I had this past month, as well as the total sales numbers. We're going to start off with some of these sales that sold for the highest prices this month. First off, we have one that happened on Mercari. It was these We The Free barrel jeans. These sold for $75. No, I listed them for $75. Someone sent me a $50 offer. I accepted it, so that left me with final earnings of $45, and these took only 2 days to sell. I actually paid up for these a little bit. It was somewhere around $12 or $15. I got them on a non-sale day. These were full price, but I felt confident picking them up because they look like new, and also flare and barrel jeans are doing really well, but more so in Free People brand. They've been selling real quick for me and for high dollars like this one. I did check sell-through rate just to be sure while I was at the store, and these were coming back on the eBay research tool as a 70% sell-through rate, which that was marvelous. My heart jumps for joy when that happens, when I comp something and the sell-through rate is high, but also the sell price is high. When I can get those two things working together, that's the best. And that was also the case for these next shoes that I'm going to be talking about, which was an eBay sale. These were the Thursday Boot Company Chelsea boots for men. I accepted an offer on these as well for $50, and my final earnings was $41.29. These were listed for just 3 days before they sold. Thursday Boot Company never disappoints. I do have a pair of women's boots listed right now in my closet that have been up there for like about a month, which is not a bad thing at all. I'm sure they will eventually sell, and for a good price too, but that's not the norm for these Thursday boots. Normally they sell a lot faster, kind of like this one, within days. But I think those boots are sitting a little bit for me because they are white, and from the patterns that I've seen over the years, white boots do sell, but at a little bit of a slower rate. Also on eBay, these next boots were the Rag & Bone pull-on Chelsea boots. They also sold for $50, and my final earnings was $32.92. These did not sell as fast as the others. They took a total of 92 days, which is still pretty good. It's almost within the 90 days that I like selling things in. I got these boots in a thread-up shoe rescue box. I think the final cost of goods for the shoes in that box was $10 or around there. I did record a video, which I can link on the screen for you. Everything I did end up keeping from that box has sold already, so I do think that this can be a viable way to get inventory, at least to kind of supplement it when you're low a little bit. It's not my preferred method of sourcing because I like going out there, looking at things and picking things out for myself, but I definitely would do this again. And now that I'm selling clothing too, it'd be nice to try out a clothing box from them. So maybe I'll do that soon and record a haul on that. Next, again on eBay, we have these Born wide calf. That right there is important. Wide calf. If you can get boots that have that, you are looking at a quick sale more than likely. They were equestrian, western, riding, knee-high boots. These sold with a coupon actually. I do run a coupon on my eBay store pretty much year-round. I switch it up. Sometimes it's 15%, sometimes it's 20%, and other times I do bump it up to about 25%. After they applied that discount, they paid a total of $44.99, and in the end my earnings was $35. $37 for this sale. These sold in just one day. I think I could have priced these just a little bit higher, but I didn't want to push it and have them sit for longer than they needed to. But judging by this sale, these kind of equestrian born boots are still doing strong. But I think when I do find them again, I'm going to try to list them just a little bit higher to see what happens, to see if I can manage to get more for them, because I feel like with these I could have. Again, another eBay sale. All my high price sales were happening there this month. It was these Clark's Chukka Desert Boots. These sold after a coupon discount as well for $50.41. My final earnings for these was $31.14, and these also took a while to sell, 114 days. I wasn't too sure if I should pick these up when I found them at the store, because I did have a few Clark Chukka boots before and they sat for a long time, more than these did. But the color was cool, and after doing comps I saw that I could possibly get a little bit more for them than usual, so I decided to go with it, and it worked out this time. Now I know that men's Chukka boots, normal colors, be careful with, because they sell for a little bit less, but the more unique colors could be worth it because you can get a little bit more money for them. Next, this time on Poshmark, I sold these Birkenstock sneakers. They were a pink suede lace up, very beautiful, like new condition shoes, which is why I decided to give them a shot. They sold for $80. After all of the fees Poshmark took out, I was left with $62.94, and these sold in 10 days. I did pay up for them like $20, but like I said, they were like new. Comps looked real good, so it was an easy $20 risk to take for me. I would definitely buy these again, and I think I've sold 2 other ones in the past actually. But all in all, Birkenstock sandals, sneakers, even their sublines. I know they have one called Papilio. I'm sure there's one more out there. All of them do well for me. All sorts of footwear by them and their sub brands. Again on Poshmark, these next boots were Fry boots. They were this chestnut brown color with a block heel. They had a buckle, and I titled them Biker Booties. These sold for $93. My final earnings was $73.17, and these were listed for 133 days, so a little bit longer than I'd like, but this is kind of to be expected from most Fry boots. There are some that can sell a little bit faster. I think the more modern looking kind that are grungy, those sell faster, but for the most part, most Fry boots that I pick up end up performing like this. They sell anywhere from $70, $100, sometimes a little bit more, but they do take several months to sell. Next on Depop this time, and this is the highest sell of all this month, I think. These were the Hunter waterproof rubber boots. I also put in there Gorpcore outdoor rain lug sole. They sold for $92.67 after Depop took out the payment processing fee, and I don't have it here in my notes. I'm not sure if there's a boosted fee there. Maybe there is, but my final earnings was $79.99, and these also took a little bit long to sell. Like the Fry boots, they took 120 days. Hunter is a good brand to know. They perform exceptionally well during the cold weather months. Both these boots and the Fry boots I did pick up during the summer, so I think that's why they took a little bit longer to sell, but the end profit was still worth it in the end for both of them. I think the Fry boots I must have paid like $15, and I kind of remember these Hunter boots were like $30, so great profits there. And I actually did vlog this day. I used ChatGPT to check comps in that video, and I documented the whole thing. Nowadays I do prefer to use the eBay research tool instead to do my comps, but if you'd like to see the actual cost of goods of these items, and if you want to see how checking comps with ChatGPT went for me, I will link the video on the screen so you can watch that next. Let's move on to a few items that sold on the lower end of the spectrum. I like to share these bad sales as well, just because there are things to learn from them. Sometimes I pick up things just to experiment, see how they go, and I want to share those results with you so you can know not only what to pick up, but also what to maybe leave behind. Starting off with these American Eagle flare pants. They were a corduroy dark green color. The keywords I used to try to sell these was hippie and 70s. They sold on Poshmark for $16. My final earnings was $12.59 and they took 19 days to sell. These were an experiment, as well as this next sale that happened on eBay. It was these Sundance Silk Blend Velvet Wide Leg Pull-On Gray Pants. They sold for $15. Final earnings for those were $10.12 and these took 18 days to sell. So both of those pants sold pretty quickly. Both of those were offers that I accepted. Maybe I could have held out for a little bit more on both of those, but I didn't want to risk it because in the end those items could have sat for another month and then I would have wished that I would have accepted those offers just to move them faster. In the end, both of those pieces were still profitable. As I said, it was just me experimenting because I do hear people say, resellers and also fashion vloggers, I hear them talk about corduroy and velour velvet type materials being a trend this time of year, but I haven't gotten the hang of it yet. I did have some anthro corduroy pants sell a little bit more quickly and for more money. I don't think I have them included in this video today, but they were a rusty brown color wide leg crop corduroy pant. Those sold really well. So maybe that's the thing, those materials do well, at least in pants, when they are dark brown and corduroy. Other than that, my corduroy pieces haven't been performing that well. I'm still trying to figure out that situation, but from what I can see right now, it needs to be a dark brown color. It needs to have a good brand behind it in order for those type of materials to sell well. Next up, it was these Nike crop leggings. They sold on Poshmark for $13. My final earnings was $8.35 for these. I did offer a shipping discount. I have a shipping discount on most of my leggings that I bought when I barely started sourcing clothing, just to try to get them to sell faster. These sold in 87 days. And basically, these were just another case of me picking things up without doing comps, thinking I knew what I was doing with clothing when clearly I didn't. And it's the exact same scenario with these next ones that also sold on Poshmark. It was these embroidered baggy cargo black retro Y2K wide leg streetwear pants. I didn't include the brand name in the title because I wanted to leave as many characters available for keywords instead. In the end, these sold for $10. It was an offer I accepted and my earnings was $6.85. Days listed was 52. I thought I could sell these based on style, and I guess I did for the most part, but just not for that much. I did make my money back in a few bucks. I'd say that was an experiment worthwhile because now I know that that brand, Style & Co., even if it has a lot of unique features that make it trendy looking, is not going to command a lot of money in the end. Now let's move back to the great side of things. I'm going to share a handful of sales that sold real quick for me this past month. Starting off on Poshmark, it was these Madewell brown leather preppy chunky platform lug sole penny loafers. These sold for $49. My final earnings was $38.55 and they were listed for just 2 days. This was an extremely profitable sale. I think these were priced at like $5 at the thrift store. This Bradley loafer is a big bolo right now in the Madewell brand. It sold well for me, and when I'm doing research on Poshmark, I see this exact style pop up all of the time as a fast selling high price item for other sellers as well, so be on the lookout for it. Next up is these Aritzia TNA green cotton utility baggy relaxed wide leg skater pants. They sold for $25 and my earnings was $15.53. They sold in just 2 days. I paid like $4 for these, so not the most profitable item, but that flip was pretty quick. I would definitely buy these TNA style pants again if I can find them that cheap. If you don't know, Aritzia is a fashion retailer, and within it they have 3 brands that are real well known. It's Wilfred, Babaton, and this one right here, TNA. All of those brands retail for a lot and they're very popular among the younger generation, and maybe some of the pieces also resell for a lot more than these pants did, but for me so far this is how pants by all of those brands have been performing. They sell for about $25 but very quick. We have these Salomon Snow Cross Trail running shoes. They sold for $49. My final earnings was $38.55 and they sold in just one day. This is another brand that is a big bolo to know. Salomon. They make high quality running shoes for men and women. This is only my second time finding it, but both times they've sold for high dollars like this one. So it is one that I'm always on the lookout for when I'm going through the athletic tennis shoes. We have these Abercrombie vintage Y2K gray fold over retro stretch flare legging yoga pants. They sold for $41.64 and my final earnings for these was $39.62. These were listed for just one day before they sold, although I was pretty confident they were going to sell the same day I listed them, because minutes after I posted these pants, they were getting attention on all platforms. I was getting messages about them. They were getting likes, and someone did message me asking me to hold them for her till the next day. I apologized and said that is not something I do, but lo and behold, the next day she came back early in the morning and bought them because no one else had at that time. I paid like $5 for these, so this was a great profit for me in the end and a quick flip as well. This is definitely a style of yoga pants you should be on the lookout for, especially in Abercrombie, but in other brands as well. They do pretty good. Nowadays, when I go through the athletic section, through the pants and the leggings, I just scan it real quick and look towards the pant leg part of the pants and look for anything that is wide leg or flare like this one, or if I see that something has a fold over at the top, then I look into it, because those kind of things are what's trending in that category right now. Next, on eBay, we have these Trask Vibram Sole brown leather business casual lace-up chucka ankle booties. They sold for $37.60. My earnings after all of the fees was $28.84, and these sold in just one day. Again, with the man chucka boots, these are like the Clark ones that I showed earlier, which is what made me look into these further when I spotted them on the shelf. Then I saw they were by this good brand called Trask, and that they had a Vibram sole. They were also like new, priced at like $8. These boots just checked off so many boxes for me, which is why I felt pretty good investing in them, and sure enough, they performed really well for me. Next, we have a Depop sale, and it was these Born Grunge boots. They were chunky and they had a block heel. I also threw in there the keyword Victorian because that seems to do really well on Depop, and these boots did give me that vibe. They sold for $37.90. My final earnings was $35.79, and these sold the same day that I posted them. I've mentioned a few times in some of my income reports and thrift hauls that I don't pick up a Born as much as I used to, but the styles that I do pick up are the ones that look like this one. They are grunge and combat, but also the tall equestrian ones that I showed earlier. Those two style Born boots are the ones that are still performing really well for me, so I'm really looking forward to finding many of them this winter. Hopefully I do. Next, on Poshmark, we had a same day sale. These were the Barefoot Dreams Cozy Chic Large Petite Pants. The petite part scared me. I thought they were gonna sit for a while because of that, but no, they sold same day and they sold for $25. My final earnings was $19.67. I was so surprised to find out that Barefoot Dreams doesn't do as well as it used to. When I used to sell clothing years and years ago, Barefoot Dreams was always a definite pickup because it was always a fast seller and it sold for a lot more than $25. Nowadays, that's not the case so much from what I'm seeing. I comp everything I find by this brand and it doesn't really check out. I have a few cardigans I did pick up anyway, and they're sitting in my closet right now. These pants did have a higher sell-through rate than the cardigans I've came across, but they didn't end up selling for that much. Again, maybe I could have held out for a bit to get a little bit more for them, but like I mentioned earlier, I'd rather get my money back same day along with some profit than risk waiting another month for a few bucks more. I paid like $4 for these pants, so in the end, it was still a good profit. The next same day sale was on Poshmark as well, and it was these Veja. I want to say Veja because in Spanish the J is like a H, but maybe it's Vija. I'm not sure, but it was these sneakers. They were white, minimalist, low-top, sporty, athletic shoes. They sold for $34, and my final earnings was $26.75. They sold same day. I actually saw these shoes at the thrift store several times before I actually bought them, but they were always priced so high. And then one day I came across them when they were the special tag of the day, so I was able to get them for 75% off. I think the final price ended up being for me about $15, which is still a bit high. This thrift store that I found them at can be a little bit ridiculous with their pricing. They price things up way too high sometimes. Even brands like Vince Camuto, Franco Sardo, and Clark's, they will price those things up way too much. When I was trying to decide whether to pick them up or not at that high price and I was doing comps, I did see that in a new condition, these shoes had a very high sell-through rate, but when it came to used, it wasn't as good. It was showing up at like a 21%. But I bought them anyway, knowing that I'd have to price them a little bit lower than what comps were showing to get them to move a bit faster for me. In the end, my final profit was about $12. So although it wasn't the most profitable sale, it worked out as planned. I knew I'd have to take a little bit lower for them. So in the end, this sale was a success for me. Before we get to the final sales numbers, I want to go over a few sales that sold very slowly for me. These are things that you should not pick up, that I will not be picking up moving forward. First off, we have a Poshmark sale, and it was these H&M platform penny loafers. I also threw in there the keyword grunge, and I put that they had a lug sole. Sometimes adding that word lug in the title can make a difference, I feel like, so I throw it in there when it makes sense. They sold for $15. My final earnings was $11.80, and these were listed for 397 days. These next ones were on eBay, and it was these Sam Edelman Bow Ballet Flats. They sold for $21.74. My final earnings was $19.01. They did pay like $12 for shipping, but for me, it ended up costing just $10. So I was able to keep a little bit more of the earnings in the end for this sale. And these were listed for even longer, 421 days. Next up are these Aerosols Bow Ballet Flats. These sold for $27.99, and my final earnings was $22.64. Same with this sale. They paid more for shipping than I did, so I was left for a little bit more earnings. That hardly ever happens, but I think for the ballet flats, sometimes we put a weight based on a box, and then we end up shipping them in a padded envelope instead, so it costs us a lot less than what eBay charges the buyer. Anyway, these sold in 444 days. All of those three sales basically was me getting trigger happy, meaning that those styles were trending at one point. The chunky loafer, the preppy ballet flats, they were all selling very well for me in other brands. So what I did was went all out. I bought those styles in other cheaper brands too, hoping that they would sell as well. As long as they fit that style aesthetic and I can get them cheap, that was my thought process. I should be able to flip them. And sometimes doing things that way, picking up trendy styles regardless of brand, can work, but sometimes it can backfire. So now I do that sometimes, but I'm a lot more cautious with it. Nowadays, I'm checking comps on pretty much everything. And then this next sale, before we get into the numbers, is these Clark's Comfort Ballet Flats. These sold for $13, and they took a total of 448 days to sell. Again, another case of me just getting trigger happy. You're going to see a lot of these kind of sales in my slow moving items categories as we go throughout the months, because I used to pick up any and all Clark's that I could get for good money, because back then Clark's box was selling for me no matter what. It was flipping for me real quick. I could rely on that brand doing well for me. But then the brand started to slow down for me a whole lot. And I ended up with a lot of it that's been sitting for over a year at this point. So the biggest lesson learned from all of that and all of the other sales in this list is just to take it slow. Keep an eye on the market with all of these trends, whether it's with fashion trends or just trends with you within your store. Sometimes an item or a brand can be selling real good for you, but that doesn't mean that that will be the case always. So don't go all out buying things that are doing well for you right now without keeping an eye on the market throughout, because the market does change and you don't want to be stuck with a bunch of slow moving inventory clogging up your store. Okay, now let's break down the total sales numbers for the month. In October, I made a total of $5,594 after the platforms took out all of their fees, after shipping costs, refunds, and anything I had to pay to these platforms. My final earnings was $3,782. From there, I have to deduct the cost of goods. For everything that sold in October, I paid a total of $1,258. So after deducting that amount, that left me with a final take-home profit of $2,523. The inventory breakdown. So what went into making those sales? I listed a total of 148 items last month, which averages out to about 4 to 5 new listings every day. I sold a total of 169 items, and that averages out to about 5 sales a day. On average, the stuff that sold was for about $33.10. I paid an average cost of goods of $7.45 for the items that sold, and that left me with an average profit per item of $14.93. So pretty much all of my numbers went down this past month. My overall sales, my overall profit, and all of those averages. I did post about the same amount of new listings this month as I did the previous month before that, when my sales were a little bit higher by like $1,000. I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened there, but there are a few things that I can kind of pinpoint as to why my numbers were lower this month. For one, sometimes things take a while to catch up. So if you don't list as much one month, but you still manage to make great sales, that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. The next month, that low listings can catch up and it's going to reflect in your sales. I think that's what happened here. I've been listing very little and it's catching up with me with my numbers going down a little bit. Also, I'm relisting a whole bunch on these older listings, and I'm also lowering the price a lot, sending very aggressive offers. So as I continue to liquidate all of my older inventory, my average profit is going to drop as well. Another thing that may have affected my sales, although I'm not entirely sure, is Poshmark's new algorithm change. The way that they do search now is different than they used to, which we're going to discuss in more detail here shortly. But on top of that, there was a period of 3 days where I had my sharer turned off accidentally. So my Poshmark closet was not being shared for about 3 days straight before I noticed it. Then I quickly turned it back on and I started seeing a lot more engagement with likes, offers, and all of that. So that may have affected my sales a little bit on Poshmark this month. And another thing was that eBay wasn't working for me for about 2 days. Their platform wasn't letting me cross list there. It just kept shutting down when I was trying to log in. And I thought it was just me and my computer. It was working fine on the phone, and a customer did message me asking me why they couldn't pay for the item they were trying to buy. I told them I basically didn't have an answer for them to try again later, but they reached out to PayPal. PayPal said it was eBay system that was malfunctioning. It just felt like last month was a weird month overall with these platforms. So many things were going wrong and there was a lot of changes taking place too. In the comments below, let me know, did you experience any of this last month? Was eBay down for you for a couple of days as well? I think I saw something somewhere on the internet, someone talking about eBay's site malfunctioning, but let me know in the comments if any of this happened to you. For now, let's go ahead and get into the platform breakdown. Let's see how each of these platforms that I sell on performed individually. First off, on Poshmark, I sold a total of 90 items and it was for $2,527. On eBay, I sold a total of 43 items and that was for a total of $1,789. On Depop, I sold 22 items for a total of $834. And then we have Mercari, where I sold 14 items for a total of $443. The biggest drops there did come from Poshmark and eBay, but it wasn't even by that much. It was only about a 5% drop in overall sales numbers from the previous month, but still those 5% on each platform had an overall negative effect on my sales for the month. And like I said, it could have been because of those issues I was running into, but we'll see if November turns out a lot better for me. I'm trying to up my listings a little bit. As I mentioned in my most recent vlog, I am getting a lot faster at sourcing items based on sell-through rate, so I'm able to pick up a lot more items every time I go. So hopefully with that, I'm able to list more and start really seeing the momentum that I'm seeking here. With all of that said, let's talk about Poshmark's algorithm / search change that they recently made. Let me start off by explaining the history of Poshmark's search algorithm in case someone who's watching this video is new to reselling and doesn't even know what all of this change is about. Poshmark search was always organized by just shared. So anytime someone went to Poshmark search bar, typed something in when they're looking for something to buy, the results they got back on the app or on the website were sorted by just shared. And it's always been this way ever since I started selling on Poshmark back in 2018. That's the way search worked. A lot of resellers did not like this about Poshmark. They didn't like that they had to share their items constantly throughout the day in order for Poshmark to show them to buyers when they searched for something to buy. But I liked it because we didn't have to pay to have our items show up higher in search where they are more likely to sell. On other platforms, you had to pay for that to happen. You had to pay to promote your listings to have them higher up in search. But with Poshmark, all you had to do was share your items. In 2022, Poshmark decided to try to change this. They started sorting the items by, I think at that time it was recommended. So instead of showing buyers items that were just shared in their search results, they were getting items that were recommended, I guess, by Poshmark. And there was a lot of backlash because of that. Sellers did not like this change at all. They saw their sales dropping, and also buyers were getting a very bad buying experience because the results they were getting were very crappy listings that had been up for years and they hadn't been touched. There were listings by sellers that were inactive. Basically, the titles, the pictures, descriptions, everything was crappy. So because of those changes, sellers were seeing their sales drop by a lot, and they weren't quiet about it. They were attacking Poshmark, basically telling them they needed to change everything back, and they did eventually. Things were sorted by just shared again, but now in 2025 they decided to try to change it again. It was at the beginning of October that I started to notice that they were sorting things by relevance this time instead of just shared. I was at the store doing comps, which I do a lot more comps on eBay, so I'm not sure if they made this change before the beginning of October and I just didn't notice, but it was at that time that I realized. And sure enough, shortly after that, they posted a blog explaining the changes they made. It is a short but very informative blog that I can link in the description, but right here I just want to go over some of the main points, share my thoughts about it, and inform you of the things Poshmark is suggesting we do to have more visibility on our items and to help customers find them so that they can actually sell. Because according to this this article, sharing is not enough anymore. First and foremost, starting November 3rd, which was yesterday by the time I'm recording this video, they are changing how our profiles look. Before, what our profile showed when you go to your closet was how many items you have listed, the follower count you have, how many items you've shared of other poshers, and what else did they have? I think that was all. But now they're changing it to how many items you have listed, how many items you've sold, your average ship time, and when you were last active. So basically, the biggest emphasis they're putting on is you being a good seller. The better seller you are, the more your items will show up when people are searching for something to buy, so that they have a higher potential to sell. Towards the very bottom of the article, they do mention that sharing your articles is still important. It is something you should still try to do because it counts towards activity. I'm thinking that means that the more you share your items, the more that last active time will be updated on your profile, so that buyers can see that you are actually on the app, you're active, and that you're more likely to respond to them if they want to know something about your item, or if they purchase your item, you're more likely to ship it quickly. Down at the bottom of that article, it does say though that sharing other people's listings has no effect on the visibility of your items. So it's basically useless, which I've always felt that sharing other people's items on Poshmark wasn't as important as sharing your own. I'm still doing it because I use a bot to do it, but if you've been doing it thinking it's going to help your sales, then it's probably best you put your attention on some of these other things this blog mentions, which one of them is that you should complete all your listing details, that you should have good titles and descriptions, that you should respond to comments and offers pretty quickly, and that you need to ship your orders out on time. And at all costs, they are now suggesting that you should avoid cancellations. That's something that obviously I've always tried to do. No one wants to cancel an order on a customer, but I didn't panic as much as I did with eBay because I know eBay tracks that, and Poshmark, I didn't think they tracked it as much. But now that they're putting it in writing, this is something I'm going to try to be extra careful with. I actually need to do an inventory check to make sure that everything is organized on all my platforms and that things that are listed I actually have here. But what I gather from that short article, in short, is that Poshmark is trying to work more towards working like eBay search does. Keywords do still matter, sharing still matters, but on top of that, so does relevance and engagement too. Engagement meaning click-through rate. So once your item is shown to a buyer, how often are they clicking on your item? Also, how often are people liking your item, sending you an offer? How often you're sending offers to likers too? So it seems like now Poshmark is taking into account the seller performance overall, pricing competitiveness, and also listing quality. These are all things that eBay tracks as well, and they do have a dashboard that show us exactly how we're performing in all of these areas, and they reward sellers who keep all of these numbers in good standing with a lot more visibility on their listings. So if you're already doing all of these things right, if you have an eBay account as well, then all of these things should translate very well over to your Poshmark account. Keeping up and making sure we stay in good standing across all of these things is a lot more work for us sellers. It puts a little bit more pressure on us to make sure we're doing things as best we can, but it gives the buyers a lot better buying experience, which in the long run can only mean more sales for us because they're going to want to continue to keep coming back to the platform to buy what they're looking for. So if Poshmark were to keep improving their search based on all of those metrics, and if they were to give us a dashboard we could look at to see how we're performing and what we can do better, I think that would be a win for everyone. But I think that's still a long time from now when that will happen. But I think slowly over time they are going to continue to improve, and I'm here for it. But with that said, there is one more thing that eBay tracks and takes into account to to determine which listings to show up higher in search, and that is whether the seller is promoting the listing or not. And that opens the door up to a few whole other topics. One is, now I'm wondering if the promoted feature on Poshmark is going to be worth it. Since sharing is not as impactful as it used to be, I wonder if now promoting your listings is a viable way to get more sales. I may try it out for a week or two this month just to see how it turns out, or I may look into it further to see if anyone's tried it recently. If you have, let me know down in the comments, and if I end up trying it out, I will report back the results here. And the other topic that brings up is that eBay is also making a huge change. They are changing how their promoted listings work, specifically how they charge us for it. They're not going to make this change until the beginning of January, so I'll probably talk about it closer to that date. But I do have a plan in place already to how I'm going to handle this big change that is coming to eBay, because a large percentage of my sales do come from promoted listings. So this is something that I feel is going to impact my account. So as I said, lots of changes coming to all of these platforms. These aren't the first, they won't be the last. We just have to go with the flow. All they're doing is trying to keep up with the times and make the changes that they think are necessary to make their businesses better, and we should just try to do the same. We should also be changing things around and keep up with the times. That just shared search on Poshmark was a little bit outdated. Doing search that way did work at one point, but nowadays with AI and bots who can do that for us all day, every day, it doesn't make sense to keep ranking items in that way. So I can see why they would want to switch it up now. In the comments down below, let me know, how were your Poshmark sales this past month? Were you able to make what you usually make amid the changes in the algorithm and the search? Let's talk about it down in the comments. That's all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.